Did you know the U.S. Navy actually flooded a full-size destroyer for a movie shoot in 1943? Hollywood's love affair with WWII Naval warfare has given us some of cinema's most claustrophobic, gut-wrenching battles ever filmed. But which sea-based war films truly deserve your attention? Let's dive into the 15 greatest WWII naval movies that capture the terror beneath the waves and the chaos on the high seas. Number 15. Greyhound, 2020. Tom Hanks wrote and starred in this relentlessly tense Atlantic convoy thriller that somehow got dumped onto Apple TV Plus during the pandemic. Based on the novel The Good Shepherd, it follows Commander Ernest Krause, leading his first convoy mission through the Black Pit, the deadly mid-Atlantic gap where Allied air cover couldn't reach. What makes this film extraordinary is its ruthless efficiency, clocking in at 91 minutes with virtually no backstory, just pure, unrelenting naval combat. The production built a 1.1 scale replica of a Fletcher-class destroyer bridge on hydraulic gimbals, creating the most authentic destroyer combat experience ever filmed. Actors were constantly drenched in freezing water and thrown across the set as the entire bridge rocked violently during simulated depth charge attacks. Critics initially dismissed it as too technical and lacking character development, but naval historians praised its tactical accuracy. One retired Navy commander called it the most realistic portrayal of convoy duty ever filmed. The film's dialogue is filled with authentic naval jargon that Hanks refused to simplify for audiences. Apple never released streaming numbers, but industry analysts estimate it became their most watched film release during the pandemic, despite receiving almost no marketing push. Greyhound might be the most underrated naval thriller of the 21st century, a lean, mean combat film that throws you into the Atlantic with no life preserver. Number 14. They Were Expendable, 1945. John Ford and John Wayne teamed up for this PT boat saga while the Pacific War was still raging. Based on William White's book about Motor Torpedo Boat Squadron 3, it follows Lieutenant John Brickley and his crews during the disastrous Philippine campaign of 1941-42. What sets this film apart is its unflinching portrayal of American defeat, something virtually unheard of in wartime Hollywood. Ford, a Navy commander himself who filmed actual combat footage at Midway, insisted on brutal realism. The production used real PT boats and filmed at actual naval bases with serving sailors as extras. Most shocking to 1940s audiences was the scene where PT boat crews are ordered to abandon their vessels, the boats that were supposed to help win the war, and retreat as infantry. The film's title comes from the bitter reality that these sailors were considered disposable assets. Wayne and Ford reportedly clashed constantly during filming, with Ford repeatedly humiliating Wayne for not enlisting in actual combat service. This tension shows on screen as Wayne's character struggles with the shame of retreat while continuing to fight. Critics initially found it too grim for 1945 audiences hoping for triumphant war stories, but it grossed $3.2 million despite its downbeat tone. Today, military historians consider it the most accurate portrayal of America's darkest naval hours in the Philippines. As one PT boat veteran put it, Ford showed what really happened. We fought like hell, we lost, and nobody back home wanted to admit it. Number 13. In Which We Serve, 1942. Noel Coward. Yes, that Noel Coward, the witty playwright, co-directed and starred in this propaganda masterpiece, while German bombs were still falling on London. Based partly on the real-life exploits of Lord Louis Mountbatten, it follows HMS Torrin and her crew from commissioning through her final sinking. What makes this film remarkable is how it seamlessly blends upper-class naval command with working-class sailors, creating a portrait of British society united against fascism. The Admiralty was so invested in the film, they provided an actual destroyer for exterior shots, despite desperately needing every ship for convoy duty. The most powerful scenes show sailors clinging to a life raft after their ship is sunk, facing strafing from German aircraft, a sequence filmed using actual Royal Navy survivors as consultants. Coward, despite his reputation for frivolity, delivered a performance of steely resolve that earned him a Special Academy Award. Winston Churchill personally approved the script, believing its unflinching portrayal of naval losses would strengthen rather than damage morale. The film's most controversial element was showing the home lives of sailors, including scenes of their houses being bombed while they were at sea, a grim reality rarely depicted in wartime cinema. It became Britain's highest-grossing film of 1942, with audiences often watching in theaters that had been damaged by the same Luftwaffe bombers shown in the film. As the Times noted, for the first time, the screen shows war as it is. Not a glamorous adventure, but a necessary sacrifice. The film's documentary-like approach influenced British realism for decades, making it both a propaganda piece and a legitimate cinematic landmark. Number 12. Midway, 1976. Hollywood assembled the most ridiculous all-star cast in history for this sprawling epic about the battle that turned the tide in the Pacific. Charlton Heston, Henry Fonda, James Coburn, Glenn Ford, Hal Holbrook, Robert Mitchum, Cliff Robertson, Robert Wagner. It's like someone emptied an entire retirement home for 1950s movie stars. The film alternates between American and Japanese perspectives of the June 1942 carrier battle that crippled the Imperial Japanese Navy forever. What makes this film unique is its use of actual combat footage. The studio incorporated real footage of diving American bombers and exploding Japanese carriers, sometimes awkwardly. The production had access to several active-duty aircraft carriers for filming, with the USS Lexington serving as both American and Japanese flight decks on different days. The Naval Historical Center criticized the film's many inaccuracies, particularly scenes showing radar-guided bombing runs that were technologically impossible in 1942. Despite these flaws, it became Universal's biggest hit of 1976, grossing $43.2 million. The film pioneered sensor round technology, a gimmick using massive subwoofers to make theaters physically shake during battle sequences. Several theaters reportedly suffered structural damage from the excessive vibrations. Japanese audiences saw a completely different version, with additional scenes focusing on Admiral Yamamoto, creating two distinct films from the same footage. Critics dismissed it as a historical pageant rather than drama, but its balanced portrayal of Japanese commanders as competent strategists rather than villains was revolutionary for 1970s American cinema. One naval historian noted, "It's a mess historically, but it captured something essential about Midway, how thin the margin between victory and defeat really was." Number 11. The Cruel Sea, 1953. This British masterpiece strips away all Hollywood glamour to show the brutal monotony and sudden terror of Atlantic convoy duty. Based on Nicholas Monserrat's novel, it follows the crew of HMS Compass Rose, a corvette escorting merchant ships through U-boat-infested waters. What distinguishes this film is its unflinching portrayal of moral compromise in war. The captain must deliberately run down shipwrecked sailors to destroy a lurking U-boat, a scene that left 1950s audiences stunned. Director Charles Friend insisted on authentic naval dialogue, with technical jargon left unexplained, immersing viewers in the disorienting reality of naval warfare. The Royal Navy provided actual corvettes for filming, with scenes shot in heavy Atlantic swells that caused genuine seasickness among the cast. Jack Hawkins delivers a career-defining performance as Lieutenant Commander Erickson, a merchant marine officer thrust into wartime command who gradually hardens into a ruthlessly efficient killer. The film's most controversial aspect was showing British sailors looting from their own sunken ships, something never depicted in earlier, more sanitized war films. Critics praised its documentary realism, with The Guardian calling it the first film to show war at sea as an exercise in prolonged misery, punctuated by moments of pure horror. It became Britain's highest-grossing film of 1953, resonating with a nation still living under rationing and rebuilding from wartime destruction. The film's influence on naval cinema cannot be overstated. Every subsequent film showing the psychological cost of command, from Das Boot to Crimson Tide, owes a debt to The Cruel Sea and its portrait of good men forced to make monstrous decisions. Number 10. Sink the Bismarck, 1960. This British naval thriller follows the desperate hunt for Nazi Germany's most powerful warship after it sank the pride of the Royal Navy, HMS Hood, killing 1,315 sailors in minutes. Shot in crisp, black-and-white cinemascope, it focuses on the strategic chess game between British naval intelligence officers and the Bismarck's commanders. What makes this film unique is its documentary-like approach, with Kenneth More's admiral character narrating events directly to the audience, creating a sense of historical immediacy. The production secured unprecedented Admiralty cooperation, filming aboard actual Royal Navy warships. Most impressive were the scale model battle sequences, using enormous 1/12 scale ship models in massive water tanks that created startlingly realistic naval combat. The film's most technically challenging scene shows the sinking of HMS Hood, achieved using an 18-foot model filled with gunpowder charges that actually split in half on camera. The film takes significant historical liberties, particularly in portraying the Bismarck's captain as a fanatical Nazi, when, in reality, he was an old-school naval officer skeptical of Hitler. Critics praised its technical precision while noting its propagandistic elements. The New York Times called it as rousing a tribute to the British Navy as has come from British films, while acknowledging its deliberate simplification of history. It performed exceptionally well at the box office, particularly in Britain, where memories of the actual hunt remained vivid. Naval historians still debate the film's impact on public understanding of the battle, with some arguing it unfairly portrayed the German sailors as villains rather than professional naval officers. As one Bismarck survivor later noted, "They made us all into Nazi monsters. We were sailors doing our duty, just like the British." Number 9. The Enemy Below, 1957. Robert Mitchum and Kurt Jürgens face off in this taut cat-and-mouse thriller that broke new ground by humanizing the German side of naval warfare. Mitchum plays an American destroyer captain hunting Jürgens' U-boat in the South Atlantic. What sets this film apart is its balanced portrayal. Both captains are shown as intelligent, honorable men, reluctantly trying to kill each other. This moral equivalence was shocking in 1957, just 12 years after the war ended. Director Dick Powell, better known as an actor, insisted on technical accuracy, using a real destroyer for surface scenes and building a full-scale submarine interior on hydraulic rams. The claustrophobic U-boat sequences were filmed with handheld cameras in tight quarters, creating a documentary feel decades ahead of Das Boot. The film's most impressive technical achievement was its underwater photography, with specially designed camera housings capturing realistic depth charge explosions. The film won an Academy Award for special effects, but faced criticism for its sympathetic portrayal of German submariners. Several veterans organizations protested, calling it soft on the enemy. Despite controversy, it performed well at the box office and became a favorite among actual naval officers for its tactical authenticity. The film's influence extended far beyond cinema. Gene Roddenberry cited it as direct inspiration for the submarine-style battles in Star Trek. Its greatest legacy might be establishing the worthy opponent trope in war films, showing that humanity exists on both sides of combat. As film historian Janine Basinger noted, it was the first American film to suggest that the Germans weren't all monsters, a radical idea in the 1950s that paved the way for more nuanced war films. Number 8. Run Silent, Run Deep, 1958. Clark Gable and Burt Lancaster lock horns in this submarine psychological thriller that's basically Moby Dick with torpedoes. Gable plays Commander Richardson, obsessed with destroying a Japanese destroyer that sank his previous submarine. Lancaster is his executive officer, who believes the captain's vendetta will get them all killed. What makes this film exceptional is its claustrophobic tension. Most of it takes place inside a submarine, where the greatest threat isn't the enemy, but the mental stability of the commanding officer. Director Robert Wise insisted on technical perfection, building an accurate submarine interior where scenes were shot chronologically to capture the crew's growing exhaustion. The production consulted with actual submarine commanders, including ones who'd survived depth charging. The most harrowing scenes show the psychological effects of depth charge attacks. The actors weren't acting when they showed fear, as Wise used explosive charges against the hull without warning to capture genuine startled reactions. Critics praised the film's psychological complexity, with the New York Times calling it as tense as a watch spring. It grossed $3.1 million on a $1.6 million budget, impressive for a film with minimal action sequences. The film's impact on submarine cinema can't be overstated. From Crimson Tide to Caine, The Widowmaker, virtually every subsequent submarine film borrows its pressure cooker command dynamics. Even actual submariners acknowledge its authenticity. As one retired commander noted, "It gets the most important thing right. In a submarine, the real enemy is fear itself." The film's greatest achievement might be showing that the psychological trauma of command can be more damaging than enemy fire. Number 7. The Caine Mutiny, 1954. Humphrey Bogart delivers his most unsettling performance as the paranoid Captain Queeg in this adaptation of Herman Wouk's Pulitzer Prize-winning novel. Set aboard the fictional USS Caine, a minesweeper in the Pacific, it follows a crew's gradual rebellion against their mentally unstable commander. What makes this film extraordinary is how it refuses simple morality. Even when Queeg is clearly unfit for command, the film questions whether removing him was right. Columbia Pictures spent $2 million, enormous for 1954, on technical accuracy, securing Navy cooperation to film aboard actual warships. The production's most impressive achievement was its typhoon sequence, filmed in a massive indoor tank with wind machines creating 30-foot waves that tossed a full-sized ship mock-up. Bogart's portrayal of mental breakdown, complete with nervous tics and steel ball bearings, was so convincing that many veterans recognized symptoms of what would later be called PTSD. The Navy initially refused to cooperate with the film, fearing it would encourage insubordination, until the producers emphasized the film's final courtroom scene condemning the mutiny. Critics praised its moral complexity, with Bosley Crowther calling it a drama of human frailty that makes Captain Queeg both villain and victim. It grossed $8.7 million, becoming Columbia's highest-earning film of 1954. The American Psychiatric Association later used clips of Bogart's performance to train doctors to recognize paranoid personality disorder. The film's greatest legacy might be its unflinching portrayal of how war breaks men mentally, not through combat, but through the crushing responsibility of command. As one naval historian noted, more officers were relieved for mental health reasons than combat injuries. The Caine Mutiny was the first film brave enough to admit it. Number 6. Torpedo Run, 1958. Glenn Ford stars in this overlooked gem about the ultimate naval moral dilemma. A submarine commander who must fire on an enemy ship carrying American prisoners, including his own wife and child. Set during the early days of the Pacific War, it follows Commander Barney Doyle's torturous decision and its psychological aftermath. What distinguishes this film is its unflinching look at the human cost of tactical decisions, refusing the simple heroics of most 1950s war films. MGM spared no expense on the special effects, using enormous 20-foot submarine models, filmed in a 300,000-gallon tank with underwater cameras. The torpedo attack sequences set new standards for realism, with specially designed miniature explosives creating underwater detonation effects never before captured on film. The most technically challenging scene shows a submarine narrowly avoiding being crushed by a sinking aircraft carrier, achieved using precisely timed hydraulics and compressed air. Critics were divided, with some praising its moral complexity, while others found it melodramatic. Variety called it a war picture that emphasizes the personal anguish behind military decisions. Though not a box office sensation, it developed a cult following among submarine veterans who recognized its psychological authenticity. The film was controversial for showing American officers suffering mental breakdowns, something military advisors tried to remove from the script. What elevates Torpedo Run above typical war films is its refusal to provide easy answers. As film historian David Thompson noted, it asks the hardest question of naval warfare. What happens when military necessity and human love become directly opposed? Most war films pretend this conflict doesn't exist. Number 5. Destination Tokyo, 1943. Cary Grant trades his suave persona for a submarine captain's cap in this wartime propaganda film that somehow manages to be both patriotic and surprisingly realistic. It follows the USS Copperfin on a secret mission into Tokyo Bay to gather intelligence for the Doolittle raid. What makes this film remarkable is that it was produced while the war was still raging, yet includes technical details so accurate that the Navy briefly considered classifying it. Warner Brothers built a full-scale submarine interior that was so realistic, submariners visiting the set pointed out only minor inaccuracies. The most intense scene shows an emergency appendectomy performed in the submarine's wardroom using medical textbooks, based on an actual incident aboard USS Sea Dragon. Director Delmer Daves insisted on authentic naval procedures, with real submariners as technical advisors ensuring every valve, turn, and command was accurate. The Office of War Information praised its propaganda value, while actual submariners marveled at its technical accuracy. The New York Times called it as authentic as a slap in the face, despite its obviously dramatized elements. It grossed $3.2 million, exceptional for 1943. The film's most lasting impact came after the war, when captured Japanese documents revealed they had studied it to improve their anti-submarine tactics, believing it showed actual American procedures. The U.S. Navy still occasionally screens it during submarine training for its surprisingly accurate portrayal of undersea warfare psychology. As submarine historian Norman Palmer noted, for a Hollywood film made during wartime, its technical accuracy is astonishing. Some scenes could have been used as training films. Number 4. PT-109, 1963. Cliff Robertson portrays future President John F. Kennedy in this authorized biopic about Kennedy's wartime service commanding a PT boat in the Solomon Islands. Released while Kennedy was in the White House, the only film about a sitting president, it follows the famous incident where Japanese destroyer Amagiri rammed and sank Kennedy's PT-109, forcing him to lead survivors to safety. What sets this film apart is its political context. It essentially served as a feature-length campaign commercial highlighting Kennedy's heroism. Warner Brothers spent a then enormous $5 million on production, filming on location in Florida and the Caribbean with full-sized functioning PT boat replicas. The White House exercised unprecedented control over the script, with President Kennedy personally approving Robertson for the role and requesting script changes. The film's most impressive technical achievement was its nighttime collision sequence, requiring complex miniature work and underwater photography that established new standards for naval disaster scenes. Critics were divided, with many noting its obvious political agenda. The New Yorker called it less a war film than a 140-minute advertisement for the Kennedy administration, while others praised its technical merits. It performed moderately at the box office, grossing $3.4 million. The film's historical accuracy remains hotly debated. While the basic facts of the PT-109 incident are correct, many scenes were embellished for dramatic effect. Its most lasting legacy might be establishing the template for the presidential hero backstory that candidates still employ today. As political consultant Frank Mankiewicz later noted, before PT 109, military service was qualification for office. After it, military heroism became almost a requirement. Number 3. Midway, 2019. Roland Emmerich, the master of disaster porn, somehow delivered a surprisingly accurate naval epic about the battle that changed the course of the Pacific War. Focusing on dive bomber pilots and intelligence officers rather than high-ranking admirals, it portrays the June 1942 carrier battle, where outnumbered American forces crippled Japan's elite carrier fleet. What distinguishes this film is its balance of spectacular action with historical precision. Almost every major event shown actually happened, often exactly as depicted. The $100 million production used cutting-edge CGI to recreate extinct aircraft carriers and planes with unprecedented accuracy. Naval historians served as consultants on everything from radio procedures to flight deck operations. The most impressive sequence shows the American dive bomber attack that destroyed 3 Japanese carriers in 6 minutes. A moment that genuinely changed world history, recreated with stomach-dropping vertical dives, filmed using virtual cameras that no physical aircraft could achieve. Critics gave mixed reviews, with some praising its historical accuracy, while others found the characters thinly drawn. The Chicago Sun-Times called it old-fashioned in the best sense, a throwback to the days when war movies actually tried to get things right. Despite positive audience scores, it underperformed at the box office, grossing $125 million against its $100 million budget. The film sparked renewed interest in the battle, with the Naval History and Heritage Command reporting increased website traffic to their Midway resources after its release. Its most significant achievement might be its portrayal of Japanese officers as competent professionals rather than stereotypical villains. As one naval historian noted, for all its Hollywood moments, it captures something essential about Midway: how quickly overwhelming Japanese superiority was reversed by a combination of intelligence, courage, and sheer luck. Number 2. The Enemy Below, 1957. Robert Mitchum and Kurt Jürgens face off in this taut cat-and-mouse thriller that broke new ground by humanizing the German side of naval warfare. Mitchum plays an American destroyer captain hunting Jürgens' U-boat in the South Atlantic. What sets this film apart is its balanced portrayal. Both captains are shown as intelligent, honorable men reluctantly trying to kill each other. This moral equivalence was shocking in 1957, just 12 years after the war ended. Director Dick Powell, better known as an actor, insisted on technical accuracy, using a real destroyer for surface scenes and building a full-scale submarine interior on hydraulic rams. The claustrophobic U-boat sequences were filmed with handheld cameras in tight quarters, creating a documentary feel decades ahead of Das Boot. The film's most impressive technical achievement was its underwater photography, with specially designed camera housings capturing realistic depth charge explosions. The film won an Academy Award for special effects, but faced criticism for its sympathetic portrayal of German submariners. Several veterans organizations protested, calling it soft on the enemy. Despite controversy, it performed well at the box office and became a favorite among actual naval officers for its tactical authenticity. The film's influence extended far beyond cinema. Gene Roddenberry cited it as direct inspiration for the submarine-style battles in Star Trek. Its greatest legacy might be establishing the worthy opponent trope in war films, showing that humanity exists on both sides of combat. As film historian Janine Bassinger noted, it was the first American film to suggest that the Germans weren't all monsters, a radical idea in the 1950s that paved the way for more nuanced war films. Number 1. Das Boot, 1981. Wolfgang Petersen's claustrophobic masterpiece redefined naval warfare cinema by placing viewers inside a doomed German U-boat during the Battle of the Atlantic. following the crew of U-96 as they face depth charges, aircraft attacks, and crushing psychological pressure. It portrays war from the perspective of the enemy with unflinching realism. What makes this film revolutionary is its refusal to judge. These aren't Nazis, just terrified young men in a metal coffin trying to survive. The production's commitment to authenticity bordered on masochism. The cast spent months in a meticulously recreated submarine interior barely wider than their shoulders. Peterson refused to let them go outdoors during the 16-week shoot to induce genuine claustrophobia and vitamin D deficiency. The film's most extraordinary technical achievement was its camera system. Cinematographer Jost Vacano invented a gyro-stabilized handheld rig that could move through the submarine's narrow corridors, creating the film's signature fluid, tracking shots. Critics worldwide hailed it as a masterpiece, with Roger Ebert calling it one of the most authentic war films ever made. It received 6 Oscar nominations, unprecedented for a German-language film, though its $18.5 million budget was enormous for a European production. It grossed over $84 million worldwide. The film exists in multiple versions: the original 149-minute theatrical release, a 209-minute television miniseries, and the definitive 293-minute director's cut, each offering a different experience. Its cultural impact was so profound that it fundamentally changed how submarine warfare is portrayed in cinema and literature. As naval historian Peter Padfield observed, before Das Boot, submarine films were essentially adventure stories. After it, they became human dramas about psychological endurance. The film's greatest achievement might be making audiences empathize with the so-called enemy, showing that the true antagonist in war is not the other side, but the brutal indifference of the sea itself. Did we miss your favorite? The Naval Theater of WWII gave us some of cinema's most claustrophobic, morally complex masterpieces. From the crushing depths of Das Boot to the strategic genius of Midway, these films capture not just tactics and explosions, but the psychological toll of war at sea. But here's the real question. Have modern naval war films with their CGI spectacle lost the human element that made these classics so powerful? Or is technical accuracy more important than character development? Tell us your thoughts in the comments below, and let us know which WWII naval film deserves to be remembered as the greatest of all time.